Late last year, the analysis of satellite data showing air pollution around the world revealed that the coal town of Emalahleni in Mpumalanga is the largest nitrogen dioxide hotspot across 6 continents. With the World Health Organization estimating that 7 million people around the world die from air pollution every year, what can local government do to respond to this public health crisis? John Webb travelled in search of innovative answers.
This is Thomas Nguni. In another life, he might be spending his mornings preparing for an office job. But instead, a sense of commitment to his community and what he feels is an assault on their human rights bring him here, Emalahleni. It's the heartland of what some are calling a health crisis.
Got a lot of retired people and with a lot of youth, which is unemployed.
𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏 sits alongside Emalahleni, previously Witbank, and is blighted by many of the social problems you find elsewhere in South Africa. But there's something else. This is coal-burning country. In 2013, it was labelled the dirtiest city in the world, not because of the state of its streets, but rather the quality of its air.
You go into a community meeting, there are about 50, 60 people, and then people will normally say, no, I'm fine. You know, they keep coughing. So this is like bronchitis, asthma, the consistent coughing. It's kind of normalized in most of those communities.
When you wake up in the morning, when you see I've got wild ties there, they are covered with a black dust. When we clean it, you can feel a coffee cup. You can fill it with that dust. It's too much.
Family man 𝗀𝗵𝗶𝗀𝗶 is 𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏 born and bred, but it's now the last place he wants to be.
If I was rich enough, I could go and buy a house somewhere and leave this place.
This place isn't short of coal-related anecdotes. Few, if any, are positive. Not in the poorer communities, anyway.
The visibility, especially in the mornings, it becomes so poor that you've got to slow down. You've got to start looking out for becoming worried about causing an accident while driving or something.
Years of living here have turned 𝗀𝗁cie𝗿𝗆𝗆 into a fatalist. He feels trapped.
You're just inclined to keep quiet. What can we do? I can't take a rope and hang myself to avoid inhaling this dirty air around me.
We have a government which is supposed to protect the rights of the people. I mean, this is our basic human right. We're not asking them to do something extraordinary.
To ensure pollution doesn't exceed acceptable levels in places like 𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏, we have what are known as the minimum emission standards, or MES. Critics say the standards aren't strict enough, and government appears less than enthusiastic about enforcing even those.
If you ask me, is there political will to act on this problem at the moment, my answer would be no.
And nowhere is that lack of political will better demonstrated, says Greenpeace Africa's Melita Steele, than in government's handling of Eskom.
Compliance with our minimum emission standards should be, it's a no-brainer. Like, that should be the minimum. We should actually have much stricter standards if we were really serious about protecting people's health.
But lenient standards are only half the problem. In 2014, Eskom successfully applied to postpone having to comply with those minimum emission standards for its existing power stations. Government argues that postponements are legally provided for as a transitional measure towards compliance. That'll come as little consolation to people familiar with one of pollution's prime suspects, a gas called nitrogen dioxide.
Why is nitrogen dioxide so bad? Because it's a dangerous pollutant that damages people's health in terms of specifically their respiratory systems. And when there's acute exposure, it can lead to heart disease and lung cancer.
Chances are, if you live in a city or town, you're inhaling some right now. That's because it's emitted by vehicle exhausts. But, says Steele, there's an even bigger culprit.
According to our analysis, transport and electricity are actually the worst contributors. But in South Africa, it's very clear that the air pollution is significantly, primarily coming from the coal-fired power stations.
And that should be of particular concern when you learn that our standard for nitrogen dioxide, for example, is 10 times higher than China and Japan's.
So I think this is where our government becomes faulty. And this is where we say they intentionally violate people's rights, because it should be a priority to them to protect the basic human rights.
It's a common spectacle. Industry and government entrenched on one side, civil society on the other. If only there was another way. Well, as it happens, there are some shining lights in the global struggle against pollution. Countries embracing energy that's cleaner and greener. You'd battle to find a country that takes renewable energy as seriously as Sweden does. It plans to be completely fossil fuel free within the next 25 years or so. And when it comes to the transition to a cleaner future, there's a city tucked away in the south of the country that's become, well, a little obsessive. It's called Vaxjo, a 5-hour, 420-kilometer drive south of the capital, Stockholm. With a population similar in size to Emalahleni's, it's like many other cities in Scandinavia this time of year, picturesque and covered in snow. But there are things happening here that make it quite unique.
We call ourselves the greenest city in Europe, but that doesn't mean that we are finished. That is the vision, something that we really, really want to achieve.
It may be self-proclaimed, but the title of Europe's greenest city is entirely deserved. Vaxjo's even more ambitious than the rest of Sweden and intends ending its reliance on fossil fuels in just over 10 years. The impact on damaging pollutants like nitrogen dioxide has been significant. 5 days a week, Henrik Johansson leaves his home here on the outskirts of Vaxjo and travels into work. Sometimes he uses his car, which is electric, but more often than not, he uses his bicycle. You might say that he is the greenest citizen in Europe's greenest city. And that is saying something.
So I'm very happy to work here and to live here and to be part of all this.
This is a city of green energy enthusiasts, of recyclers and reusers. Even the buses here run on food waste.
We have been able to see that if we really want to do something and if we work together between different political parties or together with local companies and the university and organizations, we get results, and we see the benefits of the results.
But community cooperation can only get you so far. Vaxjo has certain attributes that have made its green metamorphosis, well, a little easier. Sandvik is the city's very own combined heat and power station, run almost entirely on wood chips and offcuts from the local timber industry. It's virtually fossil fuel free.
Yeah, this is the heart of the green city.
This is the heart of it, exactly.
Yeah.
This plant produces more than half the city's electricity and as much as 85% of its heat. The impact has been nothing short of extraordinary. This graph shows that within 28 years, pollutants, including nitrogen dioxide, have been reduced to levels that make them hardly worth mentioning. Things are not yet perfect, but a future free of fossil fuels is within touching distance.
And if we take all energy use altogether, including energy for transport, 65% is renewable. And that includes transport, so to say.
Take a deep breath in this part of the world, and what's filling your lungs is some of the cleanest air in Europe. So if Vaxjo lies on one end of the renewable energy extreme, what do cities on the other end look like? Well, in South Africa, you don't have to travel too far to find the answer. As it turns out, a shortish drive from Johannesburg, back to Emalahleni and the province of Mpumalanga. Last year, Greenpeace analysed 3 months' worth of satellite data over that province. Once again, our prime suspect, nitrogen dioxide, made an appearance.
What we can see is that Mpumalanga is the worst nitrogen dioxide pollution hotspot in the world. And the reason for that is because of Eskom's coal-fired power stations in the area.
In response to questions from us, Eskom criticised the Greenpeace report for its focus on pollution from power stations above vehicle emissions. Eskom said its power stations in the Highveld mostly comply with MES, and that emissions of nitrogen oxides at ground level meet the national ambient air quality standards. Eskom acknowledged that emissions from its power stations could lead to negative health impacts, but said it is actively working to reduce its environmental impact. Steel maintains that impact is being underestimated.
And one of the really interesting and quite sobering findings of the satellite data was that this air pollution is actually blown across into Johannesburg and Pretoria. For about 30% of the year, we're exposed to these levels of nitrogen dioxide pollution.
It's a stark contrast to places rapidly winning the battle against coal-fired power, places with enviable green ambitions.
So what is the secret to Vaxjo's success? Well, at least part of it is down to luck. And of course, there's a healthy dose of political will. But perhaps the most important element has been buy-in from the community. The Swedes seem to understand better than most the consequences of doing nothing.
Discussions, and listening to the people who are living in the town. That's the main success formula, I guess.
Local politician Magnus Volin recognizes that enforcing change comes with a significant amount of political risk.
If we have the people with us, there will also be a courage among the politicians to really do the hard transitions, because it's going to be hard. It's going to be really difficult to make this world livable in 100 years, I guess.
But South Africa is not Sweden, and Emalahleni is not Vaxjo. However, what led to success in one might just hold lessons for the other, dealing directly with communities at the coalface.
I mean, talk right now is about the just transition. We need a fair change, you know. We need to make sure that even if we change from coal to renewables, still, people should be at the center of that change. It shouldn't be about industries.